the life we're living as entrepreneurs, this was just a dream a few years ago. And now we get to live that dream of a life. And so really putting into perspective how magical and amazing it is, and that you are living your dream today. Even if it's not perfect, that's okay. But this is your dream, and to just keep going, because every season is just a season and it will end. And the great seasons and then the hard seasons, they're just flavors of business. And we need you. The world needs you.
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I am so excited. We have a very special guest with us today, and you're not going to believe this. So this is actually her last name. Her name is Kiera Dent. And Kiera actually owns a company called the Dental A-Team, and she does consulting with over 100 dental offices all across the country, where she helps them tackle different issues in terms of maximizing their profitability, their success, as well as their efficiency and their dental practice. Now, Kiera speaks from experience. Her and her husband actually own a dental practice themselves. And today we're going to talk about a niche. We're going to talk about dental practices, how to increase profitability within those dental practices, and also how to start preparing for what we call the upcoming recession. So please join me in welcoming Kiera Dent to our platform. Hey, Kiera, how are you doing today?
Hey, Susanne, I'm so great. Thanks for having me. I love what you're doing. I love what you guys are about. You are on our podcast, and it's just an honor to be here. So thank you for having me, and I'm excited to talk.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us too. Definitely. This is going to be a definitely exciting conversation for all of our listeners out there, whether they own dental practices or have worked with them, or, even entrepreneurs just wanting to glean ideas, right? From what works in one industry versus another. This is a great discussion to have. So I'm curious, first of all, Kiera, besides having such an awesome last name that just goes with such an amazing niche, what got you into this area?
Oh, man. Well, I loved dentistry, but it didn't start out that way. I did not love going to the dentist. That wasn't my thing. But in high school, I wanted to wear scrubs. So it was either be a nurse and learn the whole body, or be a dental assistant and learn the mouth. And I was like, ooh, fastest way to these scrubs, surely dental. So that's honestly how I got into it. And then I fell in love with it. I wasn't naturally gifted in it. So I became a dental assistant, a treatment coordinator, a scheduler, a biller, a regional manager, office manager. I helped teach at Midwestern University in Arizona's dental college for 3 years while my husband went to pharmacy school. And then I went and opened a practice. I was an owner in that practice, took it from 500,000 to 2.4 million in 9 months, opened our second location, and then realized I know a lot of students from working at the college. I think I'm going to start helping more of them. If I could help this one student grow our practices, we ended up with 7 locations. But if I could help other students, that would be honestly a dream come true for me. So that's actually how I got into it, with scrubs, and then just fell in love with wanting to just help more people and really be a resource to the dental community out there.
I love it. I love it that you've dedicated your life to helping dentists out there become profitable and being successful, right? With that. So tell me a little bit about what is typically one of the biggest hindrances for dentists in terms of achieving maximum profits.
Well, I think the first thing that I've seen, again, like you mentioned, working with hundreds of dentists across the nation, it's fun because we actually don't just work with dentists. I've worked with CPAs and chiropractors and audiologists. And what I found is, especially in dentistry, because that's what I've got the most experience with, is they're not great business owners. They didn't go to school. Like, I taught at a dental college. I know they went to learn a craft, and they are very creative and they love to work with their hands. And so I think that honestly, the biggest hindrance is they just never learned how to run a business. So therefore, cash flow and profitability and how do they pay themselves are never things that they ever were taught. And so they get into these, it's almost like I feel like they paint themselves into a corner where they're not paying themselves. They don't know how to get cash flow, but they love dentistry. And then they're giving discounts because they're stressed out. And so I feel that that is really the crux of what happens with profitability. And they've never learned how to track. Like, they don't know how to read a P&L. They have no idea what any of those numbers look like. And so I feel like that really tends to be where most of them aren't profitable. As soon as they start tracking their numbers and they just do a small profit first, put it on there, it becomes so much easier. Like, I had an office this year, not taking home a paycheck, completely wiped their savings. Second practice just happened September in dentistry. Any dentist listening know it's historically known as Sucktember. It's a really rough month and it just tends to be hard. And so these offices at Kiera, I'm just not having any money. We put in profit first. We have them start tracking. We give them industry standards of what their P&L buckets should look like. And it's crazy how instantly they start to have profit in their accounts and become profitable pretty successfully and pretty easily as well.
I love that. The story that you just told about dentists and, just going to school to learn a trade to help people. That's the story of so many entrepreneurs, no matter what you're in, whether you're in construction or even accounting. We went to school to be accountants. We learned tax. We learned how to do financial statements, but I don't think there ever was a class on how to be profitable. Right.
Right.
And it wasn't until, we actually sat down and go, okay, I need to be profitable. And many years after graduation, right, and made it an intentional decision that, for me personally, that's when that happened. It was just making that intentional shift with that. And so it's interesting to see like across the line, no matter what industry, I think we're all alike. They need to start giving like business classes in school and focusing on
Amen.
profitability.
Yes, I was the same way. Starting the company, I knew how to be a miracle grow for dental offices, but I didn't know how to do it. Like, I remember being almost like completely broke as I started the company. And I'm like, I feel like a fraud. I'm just be teaching people how to run their businesses. And it was because I didn't know how to collect AR. I didn't even know AR was a thing. And I was like, oh gosh, like that helps a lot for cash flow. But just so many little areas. I think every single entrepreneur out there probably has a profit fail story. And then we learn we're going to be profitable. That's a non-negotiable. That was the only rule my husband gave me. He was super encouraging of me starting a business. At Kiera, go do it. He said, just don't lose money. He said, otherwise it's a hobby and it's not a business. And I thought that was like some of the best advice was don't lose money. And so that's always been my guiding star. It's pretty much the only thing I think about. But really, like you said, I think it also takes a daily discipline. You've got to be disciplined to become profitable. It's not just something that you snap your fingers and have. And I think when you can get that daily discipline in, a lot of freedom is there for you.
Definitely. I'm one of those people that religiously goes to the dentist, so like that biannual checkout, I'm there, every 6 months at least. Sometimes more if I break a tooth or something like that. And I'm always amazed, like when I go into his office, there's like brand new equipment, like always brand new equipment. And it's a pretty big office. And I wonder how profitable you are,
Yes.
just because there's always so much new technology. I almost feel like he's like, I hope he's not listening, but a technology gadget addiction there with that. And it makes me wonder, there's obviously a lot of upfront costs set up, especially if you want to be a state of the art dentist practice. Tell me about what are some trends that you're seeing right now in the dental industry that can increase profit, or what are some things that we need to look out for?
Sure. Most dentists are CE junkies. A lot of them are tech junkies. They just love it. And I think from a lot of them, and again, I am always pro. They went to school for a real long time. Their debts are really high. I mean, the girl that I went and started a practice with, I called her 2.5 because I was like, straighten that back, 2.5. She had 2.5 million of debt on her coming out of school. So that was with our practice loan, the student loans. And so I was like, get that back straight. Like, we need you to have a great back. But what I'm finding is just even knowing what is standard. So if you want a 50% overhead across the board in dentistry, this was really helpful for me. And you can set them up. Every consultant is different. Everyone's going to do it a little bit differently. But really, if you can look at your expenses, so if a practice is, number one, make sure your collections are high. I think that's like production feeds the ego, collections feeds your family. And so really making sure that you're watching these numbers, but then even knowing the buckets of what you want. So like I average, I'm pro payroll, I'm pro team members. So anywhere from a 25 to 30% payroll amount. So if you're collecting 100,000, we're talking 30,000 should be for your payroll. And then supplies, I like dental supplies to be anywhere from 4 to 5% of total collections, your labs. Labs can go up to 9%, but again, making sure we have that there. Like we've got our rent, our advertising, our office supplies, but really looking at all of those percentages and making sure, like I strive for the practices I work with to be at a 50% overhead, excluding doctor pay. So if I know of 100,000, 50,000 is going off to expenses, to rent, to advertising, that remaining 50,000 is doctor pay, debt services, and our profitability, and taxes. So within that, I think just even knowing, so when you look at your P&L, getting your chart of accounts set up, which I didn't even know you could change a chart of accounts. This group, I'm sure, is very smart. I had no clue that you could change those up, but really having your bookkeepers and your CPAs work for you And knowing these allocation percentages, same thing in any other industry, our CPAs, our chiropractors, really getting those percentages dialed in and then saying, I want my overhead. Like I say, 65% is where we often start. And then we get down to 60% and then 55 and then 50. And we're just trimming those spots by one small percentage, being smarter, looking for buying groups, watching our supplies, giving our team members those budgets and those numbers, helping our team realize that they can impact with that overtime. But then you check it every single month and see where could I get just a little bit better. And I'm a big firm believer of atomic habits, where it's that 1% increase, that 1% change day over day over day is where you really can start to become profitable. So I really think it's just even looking at the numbers, knowing those allocation buckets, and then being diligent on it day in and day out, I think can be a good place to just start on that path to profitability.
I love that. That's that 1% difference. And some people don't realize that it's just those little teeny weeny incremental changes that you make over time. They compound and they make the difference. And it gets you to those target allocation percentages too, versus that I'm going to jump in and go on a diet today and lose all this weight tomorrow. No, it's 1 pound at a time, right? Just the way you gained it is how you make those changes. So 1% at a time. I love that, Kiera. That's really great advice there for our audience there with that. And I also think that's a great metric too, when you talk about payroll, right? A 3X to 4X on payrolls for those physicians that are working, dentists that are working, right? Making sure that they're producing that ROI is extremely important with that. I know that even in industries, we like to see that. We like to see the 3X, the 4X. I like to push people to a 5X.
Amen.
Definitely doing that. And also I imagine specialty work too, right? Certain specialty work also allows you to bring in a premium versus some of the general work. Yeah, the general work is great for recommendations, but that specialty work, that's probably where a lot of that extra higher margin work comes in.
For sure. People ask, like, we had a 5-op practice and we produced 365 a month, which honestly, any dentist out there probably just jaw to the floor. Those are freaky weird numbers, guys. Like, that is massive cranking production. And people are like, Kiera, how did you do it? You were in 5 ops. And I say, guys, I was a wickedly good scheduler. That's number one. But number two, I knew what I needed to have producing. So our hygienists should be producing. They are producers at least 3 times their pay on adjusted payroll or on adjusted fees. So if they're making real easy math, because I'm not going to go hard, if they're making $10 an hour, which nobody would be hired for that, they need to be producing at least $30 per hour to be a healthy provider. Now, if you're fee for service, it should be 4 times that pay. So helping them even know those numbers. So in the practice that we were in, we did bring in those specialty procedures. We were doing implants. We were doing it ortho. We went and got certified in those. And that's what I think is really awesome about general dentistry is they can actually do expanded services. But to take this to other entrepreneurs, what things are your, I would say, like bread and butter of your company, and what things could you add in of additional pieces? Like for us in our company, we do consulting. We fly to offices, we do it virtually, but we realize so many offices don't have their operations manuals completed. Like they have no guidebook, they have no rule book, nothing. It's just like pure mayhem. We're turning over people. They can't hire people. There's no onboarding. So we're adding in January, a 3-month operations manual creation where you come in every single week. We have the recordings for you. You can chat with us. We're going to make sure you get it done. But that's something above and beyond my normal consulting of what a need is. And so, like you said, for those doctors, bringing that in and knowing what your hourly production number should be, and then telling your team, like, I'm a team member, doctors, and I don't care what your number is. I don't care if you tell me, like my doctor, my goal was 25 to 30,000 a day is what I needed to schedule her to. I didn't think she was ludicrous. I didn't think she wanted to go buy a BMW. Like, I don't actually care. I just, as a team member, need to know the goals of our practice. So that way I can build a schedule accordingly and help you hit the goals of the practice. So I really think it's also bringing your team in, bringing those specialty services in. Most doctors are like 500 an hour, but could you push your number to 1,000 per hour or 2,000 or 3,000 per hour? And what would you even need to schedule? Usually it's a lot easier than you think it is. If you just strategically build your schedules, then it's almost like looking for patients as puzzle pieces. Yes, I will schedule them, get them in, but I'm being more proactive on my schedule rather than reactive as well.
Ooh, so many golden nuggets with that. Oh my gosh, so many golden nuggets. I mean, first of all, I love that sharing your goals with your team. I know a lot of entrepreneurs are like, oh, I don't want to be greedy. I don't want to look greedy. I don't want to tell them what the goals are, what my bottom line is. They can figure it out, how much I'm making. But it's important, right, that the team works together. It's hard to know how to score if we don't know what direction of the goal, right? And so it's important. And like Kiera said, if you have somebody that's a scheduler who's, maybe the goal is a few $1,000s an hour, I don't want to put her on like just cleaning, right? The best use of her time, right? She needs to be doing surgery, right? She needs to be doing those implants or something more complicated than that, where there's a higher rate of return on that. Definitely so many wisdom and golden nuggets. And then the other thing that I saw, Kiera, too, was we talked about payroll. And I'm going to peel that back a layer too. When you're thinking about payroll, we talk about all the dentists on board or all the docs on board or all the employees on board. And sometimes in that case, when we're looking for that 3X, 4X, you're on board too. And so you need to be paid a reasonable salary as an entrepreneur for the job that you're doing. And you need to be getting a 4X on that also, in addition to the profit.
I agree. And I'm so glad you said that because I'm a weird human in the fact that I'm female and I have set up my company on purpose to be able, I think differently than I think a lot of people do because I want to have kids. We're trying IVF, but I purposely built my company to be able to be profitable if I were to ever step away. And so a lot of dentists love when I help them set up their profit margins and how to do it because one, if you're not paying yourself and you're just being free on your books, if you will, it makes it very almost impossible for you to ever walk away and have somebody replace you. So I'm always pro pay yourself as a dentist or as a entrepreneur. Like for myself, paying myself as a CEO. I'm also a consultant, so I pay myself as a consultant. And while that might seem lavish, I don't necessarily spend it. For me, I put those in buckets for future employees. But I have the confidence that I can hire all these positions, replace myself completely, and still have a profitable business that's paying me. And I don't think a lot of people think that way. And what I found is you are so much happier when you're getting paid for the work you're doing. Like people radically, it's crazy. Their productivity goes up, their happiness goes up versus the doctors are like, well, just not even taking a paycheck. And I'm like, gosh, I wouldn't want to go to work either. And I pose the question on that often to entrepreneurs and to dentists. And I just ask the question of, let's say that you actually weren't working for yourself, but you were working for a boss. And if they treated you this way and they didn't pay you, how long would you work at that job? And the answer is usually, I would quit tomorrow. And so making sure that you are setting up a place for yourself that you enjoy working at, that you are making sure your company is profitable while paying you as well to ensure that it can sustain. And I also just think it gives you a lot of safeguards to be able to walk yourself out of that business and truly have it be a business rather than a job that you've created.
Exactly. That salary is to compensate the person for doing the job that they're doing. And if that's you in that position, that's you in that position, but it's there to be able to step out one day and pay someone else to step in and do the job that you're doing. What would they command in that rate? So what's that third market rate? Maybe go on Indeed.com, go look at some of the salary studies, go see what they're offering right now. It's not $10 an hour. Like I've seen some entrepreneurs make, and what that should be your salary. That should be your beginning goal of that 4X.
And I think also realizing that you bring so much value. I think for myself, it was really uncomfortable actually to pay myself what I would demand and command if I was working somewhere else. I remember an office offered me $150,000 to work 3 days, basically part-time. And I thought, wow, if they were willing to pay me as a front office dental person, $150,000 a year, working 3 days a week, what the heck am I doing working for myself? So to really value and to see your value as an entrepreneur and a business owner of the value you do bring to your company. And I see that though, because I think there's two sides. Some people take it like really far extreme and say, well, I'm the best and I'm going to pay myself everything in the company. And then there's people who don't think that they have value and they're not paying themselves. So really, like you said, I think Indeed, Glassdoor, check it out of just what is the common salary right now for that position can help you kind of be in the middle ground, but really realizing how much value you do bring to your company. And I really do encourage each of you to ask yourself the question of, if I worked for someone else, working these hours, getting paid what I'm getting paid, would I stay in that job? Because at the end of the day, you are the greatest asset to the business. And if you don't take care of you, that's a pretty short road that you'll be able to continue out of just sheer will and strength and basically willpower to keep you going.
Oh yeah, definitely. I often will just have conversations with recruiters and I'm like, all right, so if I want to hire somebody that does this, my responsibilities, how much would it be for me to get that person? And that's a
Yes.
great way because reality is when it comes to replacing yourself, that's probably who you're going to be going to. You're going to be going to a recruiter and paying that 25% commission, right? For them to find that person. So at least you can know where the ballpark begins.
Yes, exactly. And I just love that you really said, put your number in there, make sure you're 4Xing that number, because I really do think that that is one of the best steps to becoming profitable, to alleviating your stress and concern. And then I actually use my paychecks. I'm lucky. My husband, he works as a pharmacist at the hospital. So we try to live primarily off of his income. But my income goes into my profit first buckets, and I have business profit first buckets and my own personal profit first buckets, which to those tech junkies, those CE junkies, the people who want to buy those things, just build those buckets in there. And then that way, you can confidently buy those items without breaking the bank and still maintaining that profitability.
So many golden nuggets. You guys heard that. Create that bank account, create that sub account. I know this is getting into advanced level profit first, but if you've got a goal and let's say you want to start making retainers in house and you want those machines that like creates that 3D imaging, right? And that's going to be quite expensive. That's going to be an investment for you. Start that bank account where you're taking a little bit of OPEX and put it in there. Or once you've reached your vault, right? Your retained earnings account has gotten to a certain level where it's covering 6 months of expenses. And we want 6 months now. So when we're going into potential recession, right? It's important to have that buffer, right? Then once you're at that level, you can start to fund that equipment account too. So very juicy golden nuggets here that you're getting from Kiera. So, very exciting. I always wonder. So there's a dentist office that has the equipment from 1970. And then you have the one that it feels like I just jumped out of a technology fair. And I imagine, some of it is, just wanting the latest and greatest. We call the tech junkie. And some of it is, I don't want to invest anymore in my own firm. Maybe the other square of thought. Let's talk about balancing that. What's necessary, what's not, what things are correlated with profitability. Is it important to have the latest and greatest, Kiera? And how do you do that?
Oh, such a good question. And I think that there's a couple different schools of thought around it. Does like some offices, if they would just paint and update a little bit, they will enjoy their space more. They'll be more proud of the space they're in. And just psychologically, like my background is marriage and family therapy, actually, that psychological shift will actually have you diagnose more, generate more, and produce more because you just enjoy your space more. So there's that train of thought. I also tell people before you go, like I coach hundreds of doctors, and one office I'm thinking of right now, they have wanted to bring implants into their practice. So I'll use them as practice A, and then I've got practice B. Practice A has saved, they put it aside, they have maximized all of their procedures before going to implants. So they knew, great, we have maxed out our crowns and bridge, we've maxed out our ortho, we've maxed out our sleep. Like those are easy things. So they did ortho and sleep before they did implants, much less investment. And they are now rocking and rolling and closing a ton of cases, but they had the foundation set. It didn't hurt them to invest in it. And they were able to financially do it with literally no stress. Then practice B was saying, hey, I need to go buy these things because we're drowning. We're not making any money. So they went and jumped into implants right now. And that office does exactly what they've done consistently, and they haven't executed, maximized, and optimized the other technology that they have purchased. So I tell offices all the time, if you can use that technology and you will maximize and optimize it, go for it. I think right now, great time, it's end of year. So if there are things like Office A that I'm telling you about, they did implants, now they're doing an office build out right now. They're using their finances, looking at what their tax bill will be and seeing, could they purchase other things that would offset those taxes, but also push them forward? Hands down, do it. But I see so many doctors just get excited about CE, get excited about the latest and greatest, and then not optimize it. And I feel like at that point, that is a waste. So I think really there are both sides of the coin. But if you're also hanging out, never wanting to invest, never wanting to advance, that's fine. You just might not be able to get as far in your procedures and production. And I think it's almost the potential of the practice as if you were to invest in a few of these items.
I love that. And it's so important. You're right, Kiera, with ambiance, going into a place that's clean, that has furniture that's updated, right? Versus the 1970s chairs, something that makes people feel like, I'm not going to catch something by going here, right? I'm going to get it, that goes a long way, just having that ambiance. That's great. And I love also the fact that you said you build into it, right? So, a lot of times, especially with physicians or even specialists, it's the referrals. It's the, okay, this will help you, you have this gap right here and, we can fix it with this and we can keep upgrading. So being able to max out on your lower level procedures first and then open up for that other opportunity for the more expensive procedures. I think it's a lot of wisdom with it.
It takes a lot of discipline though. I mean, full transparency, you've got to be disciplined because the easy path, if you will, like air quotes, because there's always two sides to the coin, but the easy path is go buy it. I think if I buy it, it'll just enhance my whole life. So I really think it takes a lot of discipline, but I also feel like profit first is discipline and building that muscle, if you will, of discipline within yourself. I truly do believe leads to so much freedom. I think being able to sleep better at night, having that cash flow, and just knowing that your decisions are sound rather than reactive, I think as business owners gives us a lot of peace and confidence as well.
Definitely. And I'm thinking with a lot of dental office too, there's quite a bit of startup costs. And I want to talk about this because I think a lot of our entrepreneurs, any business that you start, whether you're starting McDonald's where you get the kitchen set up, buy the furniture before you ever sell that first burger, right? Dental offices are the same way. There's startup costs. And with any business, there's startup costs. And I think with dentistry, you can potentially have more startup costs, right? Because you've got to have the x-ray machines and you've got to have those type of things. And maybe we can talk a little bit about startup costs and projecting for what you need and creating that budget.
For sure. Startups, I think it was funny. I just did a podcast yesterday with a doctor we were going back and forth between the startup versus the acquisition. And you're right. A startup is just like, I think it's really equivalent to building a brand new home versus buying one that's already done. Two different modes of thought. The one that's already done, maybe less cost, you can get by, you can start having cash flow right away. Whereas a startup, a much higher cost and then harder to get that cash flow, but you also get to design it, create it, and you're not fixing someone else's problems or the way they were running their practice. So two different modes of thought, but with that startup, what I recommend for offices is you got to have a really great budget, if you will. And so working with dental specific CPAs, dental specific like contractors who can really budget it out. Right now I'm watching costs are a lot higher than they're projecting. So also being smart with that working capital, because I think in startups, that is the biggest piece that I've noticed is getting enough working capital. That can be 50,000, it can be 100,000, it can be 500,000, depending upon your level of comfort with debt. Because the thing about dentistry is like truthfully a very lucrative industry. It's very easy to produce dentistry in the world that we live in. I mean, you mentioned, Susanne, that you go to the dentist twice a year. Like the world has built in for us this cadence of a reoccurring customer that you don't have to work too hard to get. So having that working capital doesn't scare me. I always suggest offices go much higher than they even think that they will to give you the flexibility and the maneuverability long term rather than just going and scrimping by. Now, I come from debt. My husband and I were radically in debt. We paid down all of our student debt within 2 years of graduation. I understand that fear of that weight around you of adding more debt. But what I've seen is, especially in dentistry where there is no cap on what you can or can't make, having more working capital. So get your budget, spec it out, maybe go for the high end of that, realize you're going to have a pretty high loan. But dentistry, what I found is if you do it well, you do it right, and you're dedicated to it, that working capital gives you so much more freedom. You're able to make more revenue quicker and pay down those loans much faster. So that's my take on startups is I don't care what your cost is, but really work with a dental specific person. You don't need to go 8X chairs. You don't need to go all the fancy schmancy. You can get by, like there are dancer row chairs that are much less. You don't need the top of the top right away. Some people don't even do cabinetry, which I actually love. It's a minimalist style. So cut out that cost of it. Spend your money on technology, CBCT. I would say get a CBCT in there. Get those items that are really going to generate revenue for you and make the patient experience better, but then have that pretty hefty working capital fund just so you've got more maneuverability, knowing that you can pay it back pretty easily.
I love that. And it's really about budgeting that acquisition cost, right? And before you even spend a dime, because I'll tell you, as soon as you open that business, as soon as you start that PLLC, professional limit liability company or professional association, vendors are going to start calling you left and right. You need this, you need that. And oh my gosh, you need this. Oh my gosh, you're going to operate without this. And if you don't have parameters and you don't have guides that says, this is my budget, this is exactly where it's allocated to go, then the world is your oyster. You're a prey for every vendor out there. So it's important to, just like Kiera said, to have that defined budget before you begin of that acquisition cost, that acquisition budget.
Absolutely. It just helps you feel so much. I feel like there's security in it because then you're not like just shelling out more and more and more costs, but you know that it's a cost that you budgeted for. Just like when you buy a home, just like when you buy a car, we don't go to the top of our limit because we know it's going to stretch us thin. So doing the same thing with a startup practice. And I think in any business, that is the wise way to go. And then really having, for me at least, a repayment plan of how am I going to pay this back? What do I actually need it to look like? I think can really also give you some peace of mind and security as well.
Exactly. And I like to care what you mentioned, ROI. Every expense in that acquisition budget needs to have a corresponding ROI because we got to pay this back. So, we know that it's important that patients feel like the place is clean. So, we want to invest in that furniture and that type of thing. But, what's the next piece of equipment that's going to generate an ROI that is going to have good utilization that just about every patient's going to use this? We want to make sure that that's there with them. So very
100%.
great advice for starting an acquisition budget. Now, Kiera, as we wind down today, one of my favorite questions to ask our guests is, if you could leave one piece of advice, could be business or personal, what would that advice be?
I'm just going to go with what comes to me. And that is to remember that even when things are stressful, even when things are hard, like I think we kind of teased upon this recession coming. I know a lot of my clients today, especially I've been on calls with them, they're just kind of in this slump. But I think it's important to remember that even this slump that you're living in is the dream that you dreamed up. And to really be so thankful and honored and to give yourself that space and grace, like literally the life we're living as entrepreneurs, this was just a dream a few years ago. And now we get to live that dream of a life. And so really putting into perspective how magical and amazing it is and that you are living your dream today. Even if it's not perfect, that's okay. But this is your dream, and to just keep going because every season is just a season and it will end. And the great seasons and then the hard seasons, they're just flavors of business. And if you can recognize it for that and remember you are truly living your dream and we need you, the world needs you, because if you didn't take the risk to build this, none of us would get to benefit. And the millions of people and lives and legacy that you're leaving behind, the world needs you. And so remember to show up, to play full out, and to be grateful for this opportunity that is your dream, that's now your life.
I love that, Kiera. That's amazing advice. The world still needs you. No matter what the economy is, right? The world still needs you. So show up. I love that. Very, very great advice. Now, Kiera, where do our viewers, our listeners, how do they find you to learn to build their own dental practices with maximum profitability, or even to find a great dentist, right? What's the best way to contact you?
Absolutely. If we can help in any way, we have our podcast. I think it's one of the easiest ways to connect with us. So it's the Dental A Team podcast, or you can email me anytime, hello@thedentalateam.com. We'd love to help you in any way. Like you said, from profitability to dentistry to anything, I'm happy to be a resource to the community.
Thank you, Kiera. And what we're going to do for you guys too is we're going to put Kiera's contact information in our show notes. So for you guys that are driving and can't pull over, it'll be there. Just scroll down to the bottom when you get to a safe spot.
Thank you so much, Susanne. I super appreciate it today.
Thank you, Kiera, for joining us and sharing your wealth of knowledge.